Welcome to the Phantom Zone.
In this week's episode's first is Run. Johnathan gets his wallet stolen by the fastest man alive. Bart steals a painting from Lex that has a hidden map that only Clark can see. Then, in Transference, it's Freaky Friday in a prison when Lionel and Clark swap bodies. This is the SMALLVILLE Chronicles. Hello and welcome back. I'm Lee Gonzalez, joined as always by Alan Muir.
Hello.
So, we have a couple of really good episodes to talk about compared to our last ones. And our first one is our first introduction to the Smallville pseudo-Justice League, right?
The beginnings of their Justice League.
Which will be, I think we get Bart. I'm trying to remember the order. I think it's Bart, then Oliver.
No, it's Bart.
Aquaman?
It's Bart, then Aquaman, then Cyborg.
Oh, and Oliver is last?
No, Oliver.
Well, yeah, and then Canary later on down the line. Canary comes like seasons later, I feel like.
I think she's season 7 or 8.
Yeah, the other ones are all like introduced by like season 6, I think, or 5. I think by season 5.
By season 8, they're all like in Doomsday, he's Bart, Oliver.
Yeah, let me see. I know Aquaman is season 5.
Yeah, because
the episode with Lois. Oh, that's
that and the whole spinning off a year later.
It's actually the exact same thing. It's the 5th episode of the season. And then Cyborg is the same. It's next season. I'm trying to think, when does Oliver show up? I haven't seen him.
Oh, I think, and season 6, I want to say, is also, we forgot Martian Manhunter.
Oh, yes. He shows up in season
8, season 6.
Yeah, him and Oliver in the same season. Because his first appearance is the Batista episode, where we don't really see him, but it's him. Yeah.
We don't see him, or we see just the red eyes.
Yeah, the Oliver episode is episode 4 of season 6, where that's the season where he's kind of in and out.
Where it's sort of like the way they did Lois.
Yep, and then I think it's the season 7, which is where like all the Manhunter stuff comes in. We're finding the escapees from the Phantom Zone.
Yeah, if you search Smallville's Martian Manhunter, there's a great scene that someone edited with, it's the deleted scene from, like, the scene, it's one of the episodes leading up to the finale of season 6, where it's the introduction, or they're introduced when they're trying to introduce Bizarro. It's just like a phantom from the Phantom Zone. And it's just like a back and forth conversation between Clark and Jean, and they edited in the SETI music from Independence Day.
Oh,
And they have like there's a part in the dialogue where Jean says, "You have to admit it, Kal-El, you're an alien," and then right when that hits, you get the upswing of the John Williams music.
Oh wow. Yeah, so I'm looking at season 5 is when John shows up too. Okay, season 6. The last one to show up is Canary in seasons, like almost towards the end of season 7.
Yeah, and she may be the worst designed out of all of them.
Yeah, but she's fine. Like, it's whatever. We'll get to it when we get to it. That's very far away from where we are. So, to get back to this episode, so this is season 4, episode 5, Run. Before we go down the episode summary, so obviously the introduction is Bart Allen. So this is actually, Bart is kind of the third Flash, I would say. Although he's Flash for a very short period of time. He's mostly more known as Impulse, or the second Kid Flash. I guess he's the fourth Flash. I always forget that Jay Garrick is the Flash first.
It's Jay Garrick, Barry, Wally, and then Bart. And then it went back to Wally, then Barry.
And then it's kind of just stayed at Barry.
Yeah.
So yeah, Bart is, in the comics at least, he is Barry's grandson.
He is his grandson from the far future.
Yes. So Barry has twins, and he's his son's son
Yeah.
in the whole like Flash family tree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they actually did it perfectly. Like they set it up perfectly in season, I want to say 2 of Young Justice.
Oh yes, that's where he shows up. He's also just returned, kind of funnily, in the comics for the Young Justice comic run as Impulse.
Yeah, which is much better than the actual Teen Titans comic.
Yes.
But he was.
He's a really recent character because I have his wiki pulled up. So his first appearance is 1994 in Flash 91.
Part of the, I'm not sure if it was the William Messner Loeb's or the beginning of Mark Waid's run, but this is
Yes, it's definitely Mark Waid is his creator. So
yeah, he was when he was introduced, he became the new Kid Flash.
Yeah, like you said, if you watch Young Justice season 2, he appears as Impulse, and then he is Kid Flash in season 3.
And after he was a big part of the Teen Titans book that launched Jeff Johns to the upper echelon of DC back in like 2003 with him and Michael Cohen and later Tony Daniel. And then during Infinite Crisis, when when Wally goes to the future, Bart becomes Flash.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think. They have never really said specifically why they chose Bart of all of the characters. The only thing I could think of is that we had at this point the 90s TV show with John Wesley Shipp that was Barry. The Dini Justice League cartoon was Wally, voiced by Michael Rosenbaum. And so maybe that's why, to get like a third, but like we only see Wally's face and his name said like once in that whole series. So it's always been kind of weird that they specifically chose Bart.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've never really said
the thing is,
why.
The biggest, if you notice, like when Green Arrow starts becoming a bigger character, like a bigger cast member, he's basically Batman, but not really.
Well, yeah, it's what we still see today with Green Arrow. Like,
yeah.
For some reason, they just don't want to do Batman on TV, except for what we got with Gotham. So, yeah, Oliver takes over the Batman role, and then Bart is the character we actually see in the show is very much Bart from the comics.
Yeah.
And that's why they actually, like, he never really refers to himself as Flash. He refers to himself as Impulse, I believe, later on down the line, right?
Yeah.
So, at least, like, that's the part that's, like, kind of cool. Is, like, he is actually Bart. Like, he is Bart. Like, he's not, like, a name change Barry or Wally. Like, he's nothing like them.
Well, there's obviously Easter eggs.
Yes, there's the Easter eggs to all of them.
And there's in the season 11 comics, like, while we see Jay Garrick in only like a flashback during Absolute Justice, there's actually an effect there's this event there's this thing that happens in the comics to Bart, and I won't spoil it because it's actually really good. Like, it's a really good storyline, and it's part of the Titans storyline of Smallville, or the Smallville comics. I
need to actually go and read that. I'm like almost caught up on all my books, so should have time to start reading it.
They have nearly every single issue on the DC Universe app.
All right. Oh yeah, I forgot Swamp Thing came out. It comes out like tonight, right?
No, it's already out.
Oh god damn it! The first episode though, right?
Yeah, the first.
All right, I might have to watch that tonight.
As much as I'd say the same thing, but I actually I'm more excited for Good Omens.
Oh yeah, I forgot that came out too. But the whole season dropped, right?
I'm not sure. I
think that's how Amazon does it, because that's how they did their other shows like Tick and Jack Ryan, which sadly Tick got canceled.
Yeah.
All right, let's actually jump into this episode now. So we start like literally with Bart Allen, who is selling some stolen goods.
Yeah, he's
fencing some stolen goods in Suicide Slums, which is always
to Hannison, he'll be back, or this is his first. He's not a one scene only character. He'll be coming back in the episode.
Yes. But Suicide Slums is also something that's always been part of Metropolis. It's like that weird little. It's like the weird block.
It's the place you do not want to be on a dark night.
Yeah, it's like the one bad neighborhood in all of Metropolis. So he gets the stuff, and Hennessy doesn't want to give him a deal, like the deal that they said. And then he gets distracted, and while he's distracted, Bart grabs all the stuff and the money, and basically now puts himself in the crosshairs of a crime. I don't want to say boss, but he's like a kind of like someone that's in like a kind of decent echelon of crime in Metropolis.
We'll get to it when.
Yeah, he's like a low level boss. He's like he's a little bit more than a street tough. He's kind of like a head of a gang kind of thing. Like that's how his like level is. So we cut from here to Clark and Johnathan are leaving the cardiologist, and they're on their way.
Johnathan makes a joke about his all the new pills he has to take, like how this will match with like the pink ones will match his other ones.
Mm-hmm. It's a really fun. It's a good scene.
And then we get something that we definitely would not see today because of how much. I mean, this was 2004, and while like it. I still don't understand how that, like, what the point I'm trying to get to is we see a drunk driver. Oh,
yeah. I didn't even think about that. So I was like, I thought they were just, like, weren't paying attention, but yeah. So they're talking about they are going to a shark game. Lex gave him the tickets. Jonathan's like, oh, beware of Lex. And Clark's kind of
because he tried to, he started an investigation on you.
Yeah. And Clark's kind of like, yeah, my eyes are open, but I do kind of want to put the stuff with Lex and Jarrell behind me and kind of start anew, especially since I'm now playing football. It's my like high school year. I just want to kind of be normal as best as possible. And then, like you said, there's like a drunk driver in the middle of a day.
Yeah.
Because like my only thought is, all right, so if they're in Metropolis and they're going to a football game, and this is supposed to mirror real life, and this would be either a Sunday, like Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, or like a Monday afternoon. And this guy's like hammered and like,
yeah,
it's like really it's like cartoonishly drunk and jumps the curb. I doesn't like he's swerving all over the place. And
in the rearview mirror, you see Bart.
Yeah, he falls asleep at the wheel, and then he wakes up and swerves. All the stuff from the truck, the like pipes and stuff fall off, and are heading toward Johnathan. And Clark goes to like save him. Before he can go, we see red lightning, and Bart saves him.
We see yellow. Like we see like Clark's aura is blue, Bart's is yellow.
Okay, and I think they're wearing opposite color. Like Clark is wearing the blue shirt, and Bart is wearing red.
Yeah.
So, and Bart kind of looks at him, and they make contact, like eye contact, and then he speeds away, and then Clark's like kind of has Johnathan, and he's like, oh man, thank you. And he's like, yeah, that was not me. It was a kid in red and yellow. And then Jonathan's like, wait, what? He's like,
and then he says, yes, you're telling the truth because my wallet is gone.
Yeah. But he's also like, wait, he's somebody as fast as you. And Clark's like, I think he's faster than me. And Jonathan, that's when he's like, yeah, my wallet's gone. And so are the tickets. So this is when we cut to our bad plot, I'll just call it that, which is Jason finds Lana has the tramp stamp, and he's like, what's up with that? And she's like, blah, blah, blah. And then we leave that story. So because the tickets were stolen, Clark and Johnathan have to go back home. Clark is like, you need to report the credit card stolen so we can track down the guy who took them, because he obviously has abilities. I think this is like one of the times that Clark's like, maybe he's a Kryptonian, because I feel like he does that like 10 times in the show. Like, anytime anybody has some sort of power set that's similar to him, he's like, maybe he's a Kryptonian.
Yeah.
So, with Chloe's help, basically, Clark figures out that he's at a hotel in Metropolis. And then Clark walks in, and this is where we get the Easter egg dump of the IDs he has in his thing, which is Barry Allen, Wally West, and Jay Garrick. All their flashes. He also has a ton of other stolen goods. And then Bart kind of walks in.
Said, hey, what do you do? This is invasion of, first he said, what are you doing here? This is, or like, you're trespassing. And Clark is like, well, technically, you're trespassing I'm trespassing in a room my dad paid for it, my dad's credit card paid for it, or pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the line that I got made fun of because of me liking this episode or the show back when I was writing like 5 years ago, which was when right before Bart and Clark are about to race or try to get into that chase, something about being faster than someone can blink, and Clark says, "I don't know, I can blink pretty fast."
Oh yes, I can't remember who they're talking about. Oh man, I remember that line. Can't remember who he's talking to. Oh, he's talking about it, and he says like, "I'll be 1,000 miles away before you can blink," and Clark says, "I don't know, I can blink pretty fast."
Yeah.
And so Bart zips out of the room. Clark chases him, except Bart is faster, and not only is he faster, we get to see him running across a lake.
Which is the first time we've actually seen something like this.
Yep. So Clark goes home, and when he gets home, what's up? Bart is sitting at the kitchen counter sipping some oronge juice.
Well, no.
Yeah.
First, the next shot is comes home, he gets back and he says to Johnathan, I couldn't get him, he's faster than me. I don't know where he's probably 100 miles from here. And then Johnathan just moves a little bit, and you just see Bart sitting at the table.
Mm-hmm. And Bart's basically I've never seen anybody like you. Like, I've had this ability for a couple of years. And all he says is there was an accident involving lightning, which is kind of like I guess it's more of like both a Wally and a Barry scenario, because Bart's powers are just inherited.
It's genetic.
Yeah.
With Wally and with Jay, it was hard inhaling the fumes of hard water, which is ice.
No, I think hard water means it means something else too. It's like very mineralized water or something like that. I don't know. It's still, no matter what, it's still garbage. Like garbage, like 30.
Yeah, even when I was watching the 75-year or the DC documentary Secret Origin,
mm-hmm.
Mark Waid straight up says, "Let's be honest, the Flash origin was stupid."
Yeah, they're all dumb. And then Barry's he's working in a lab. He gets hit by lightning and thrown into chemicals, and that reaction gives him speed powers. Wally recreates the exact same accident, and that's how he gets powers. And then it's
with Barry saying, "Lightning never strikes twice."
Yeah,
I have that issue.
And then Bart is just inherited, and it's all been kind of retconned that most of that stuff was just ways for them to get connected to the Speed Force.
Yeah, which Barry is the generator of.
Yes, but they never touch on any of that stuff here. So basically, he's like, I've never met anybody who could run as fast as I can, or almost as fast as I can. And they're like, oh, what happened to your parents? And he's like, I ran away because once they found out I had powers, they were treating him differently.
No, he mentions that first. They said that they were going to that nothing would change, and then things did change eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just says to Clark, he just says, let's just get out of here and go. Let's just
go. He's like, we can literally go anywhere we want, and no one can do anything. He's like, we can go party in Mexico. We
can go anywhere we want and be back in a flash.
Yep.
I'm paraphrasing, but that's generally what he says.
Yeah, and then Clark's like, nah, I can't really do all that, and he says that, he only steals from rich people to get money, so he's not sleeping on the street. And Clark tells him stealing isn't right, no matter who it's from or for what purpose. And then Bart's like, oh, and runs around the office so you're in love with this Lana Lang girl, and you collect.
You have her name. You have her name circled 5 times in your notebook.
Mm-hmm. And then he's like, oh, and you also like to collect these weird rocks. And he opens up the little chest with the kryptonite. And Clark's like, oh, no, don't. You've got to put that away. He's like, yeah. And Bart's like, wait, what?
Yeah, I've heard people being allergic to cats and dogs, but never a rock. And this is this sets up what you think will happen later on in the episode.
Yeah, because anybody who knows about it uses it
against him. But the thing, there's a possible swerve.
Yeah. What's funny is that Bart actually is like, hey, why don't we go to Florida and just check it out? And they do.
Yeah. And
then they come back and they go to the Talon, and Clark's like, oh, hey, Chloe, this is Bart. He's my new friend. And Bart's hitting on her, which is funny because I don't think they actually say how old Bart is, but he's so tiny compared to Welling.
He's
because he's shorter than Mac, I think, in the scene, or he's like the same height as her.
yeah.
So I don't know if they're trying to make him like that makes him younger, but he's definitely in high school as well. But I don't know if he's necessarily younger than them, like, or that much. But they definitely treat him more like a kid. But so he's flirting with Chloe.
Oh, and she actually says, "Where are you from?" And he jokes the future.
Yes,
which is just perfect.
Yep. And then he's like, "You want to see a magic trick?" And he like disappears and reappears with like a flower or something like that.
Yeah, using his speed.
So we cut from here, and Martha's.
When they're at the Talon, Martha tells Clark that Lex was looking for him. So yes, he leaves Bart with Chloe, goes over to the mansion, and the 14th century manuscript, which has symbols similar to those on the cave.
Yeah, so it has, which Lex doesn't know, Kryptonian symbols on it. And Clark's
because in the Smallville universe, ancient aliens is real, and the Anunnaki are Kryptonians.
Yes, which I actually don't mind. This was an idea that they were going to do in the Snyderverse, and they were going to have Amazonians be like the descendants of ancient Kryptonians.
Oh yeah, because of the scout ships.
Yep. So basically, Clark's looking at it, and he's like, "Oh, why don't I just X-ray it just to like for the hell of it?" Which he does, and then there's a map hidden underneath of it that only he can see. Because it's like only meant for, because I think Lex says something like, "Oh, it translates to," because it's like French. It translates to like only those who are allowed to see can see through for the true meaning, something like that. So kind of a hint that Clark is like, "Oh, maybe I should X-ray this," and that's where he sees the map. And then they're kind of just standing there, and
he gets a phone call and leaves, or either I think he gets a phone call and Clark leaves. And
he gets a phone call. Lex leaves. Bart shows up in the mansion, talks to Clark, but then he leaves before Lex can see him.
Yeah, and then
Lex is like, "What? Who are you talking to?"
Yeah, and he's like, "I'm not sure if this is before, after, or during." He's talking about how great, like how crazy that how rich he is. Or Bart is talking about how much stuff, like how Lex is loaded with like all the cars and everything.
Yeah, I think he says like, "Oh, he has some like all this other stuff," and Clark's kind of like intrigued. Like I feel like at some point, Clark kind of like has like maybe he can like make sure that all the stuff is gone, but we never really touch that. So Clark goes home and he tells Johnathan about the map, and he's like, the one sentence that was repeated over and over again, "Look deeper," and Clark says like he wants to look at it better because he thinks the map leads to something powerful. Obviously, it's going to be one of the stones kind of thing. He doesn't want it to fall in the wrong hands. In the barn, Bart shows up and thanks Clark for hanging out with him by giving him an MP3 player. Clark's like, "Oh, thanks. Where'd you get this from?"
He actually, when he gets back, he's talking to Johnathan. He mentions that despite him trying to get away from the whole Jor-El thing, like his crusade, it's actually Bart who's sort of unintentionally throwing him back into the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's getting again that question about his origins. So
yeah, and he's also kind of questioning what he should be doing with his life in some ways. Where Bart's like, "Why are you kind of holding yourself down to these ideals and all this stuff when like you don't have to?" So they're in the barn. He brings him the MP3 player. Clark's like, "Man, you stole this. Like I can't take this." Bart's like, "It's not hurting anybody."
Yeah, it's like it's insured.
And Clark's like, "Well, you shouldn't be using your abilities for that. Trust me, I know." And Bart's like, "Whatever, man. You're a dick," and runs away. Clark goes back to the mansion to look at the manuscript.
And it's gone.
No. As he's standing there, like about to look for it, it's stolen, and he's like, and the alarms go off like around him.
And there are a bunch of people pointing guns at Clark.
Yeah,
and Lex walks in like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, he's like, "What happened?" He's like,
"What'd you do?"
Clark's like, "I literally just got here, and it was here, and then it was gone." It's like, "Look, I'm standing here. If I have it, check." And Lex is like, "So if you didn't take it, then you know who did." And Clark's like, "No, I don't know who took it. I didn't see them." And Lex is like, "Yeah, okay." And Lex is like, "I'm not really worried. If someone tries to sell that stuff, it's so unique. I know all the fences in Metropolis," which is like kind of a random thing to say, but it is totally in character.
I think he says something of that price,
something of that value can only be like fenced through like a couple of people.
and
He knows all of them.
No. He says that he'd like if someone he'd get it something from someone who'd like want money for money for information about it.
Yeah, he basically says like, I'm not really worried. It's just such a rare item that like I'll go figure out about it really quick once anybody tries to do anything with it. So from here,
we go back to the Talon, which I didn't like this.
Yeah,
bit.
It's just like this weird conversation between Lana and Martha about Martha kind of avoiding Johnathan.
Yeah, because she says when she's at home, she's worried nonstop. She's worried all the time about Jonathan's health, and when she's at the Talon working, it takes her mind off things. So she's kind of throwing herself into work to distract herself from something that could potentially devastate her.
Yeah, and Lana's basically like, or
spend the time with him, even even no matter what, because if something does happen, at least you had more time with him than you would if you instead threw yourself into work.
Yeah, which Lana's kind of the expert on, being that both of her parents and her first boyfriend died.
Yeah, and Martha does the throwaway line where it says that time in Paris must have given you insight.
Yep. So from here, Bart tries to sell the manuscript to Harrison, but Lex shows up. Oh, Hannison. But Lex shows up, and Lex is like, "Hey, the thief is just a little kid." And Hannison's like, and he's like, let the kid go. He's just an idiot. Hannison's like, "No, this guy, like, you don't understand. He's way more dangerous than you could think of." And he, like, Hannison knocks out Bart, and then his goons take out Lex.
No, his goon, like his armored or his thug thug bodyguard tries to take out Lex, but Lex takes the bodyguard out, and then Hannison, I think, hits him over the back of the head with a gun or just a punch, a straight up punch in the face.
Basically, at the end, Hannison's the only one conscious.
Yeah, and Clark comes in and kills him.
Yeah, Clark shows up, saves Bart and Lex, except Bart pulls out the meteor rock and takes the manuscript. And Clark's like, "No, don't do this. Do the right thing." But Bart runs away.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't do that. He just bouts stuff from Return of the Jedi. I mean, like that. There's good in you.
And Bart's basically like, "We could be stronger together. We could rule this galaxy." But Clark closes it, and so Clark can recover. And the police show up like before Lex wakes up, and I don't know. It's basically like the entire situation is kind of solved, and Clark just leaves before Lex wakes up, and the cops show up, and so they arrest Hannison and everybody. Then we see, to our bad plot, Lana takes Jason to the Kawachin Caves, and he's like, "Hey, look, you see that symbol? That's my tramp stamp." And she's like, "I don't know where I got it, and that's why I left Paris as soon as like randomly."
And like, Jason's like, "Okay, I'll help you through this," even though it sounds ludicrous. Yep. I mean, I'm seeing it, but I'm having trouble believing it.
Yes, which is like, if you knowing the kind of end of this plotline is like super weird, because
he should already know all this.
Yeah, and that means that he's been acting this entire time, because he kind of has like, he does have feelings for Lana, but he's also 100% acting on kind of like all his orders and stuff. I don't know, it gets really confusing, because I feel like they say that, and then other times it's like, no, it was all set up by his mom and he had no idea. It's like they want to have him be in on it, but also not at the same time. So from this, Clark goes to visit Lex, who's like, recovering from getting his ass kicked. And he's like, "Yeah, when I got home, the manuscript was just sitting on my desk. So whoever took it must have had a change of heart."
And then we get a nice little bit of royalty free music.
Mm-hmm.
With Clark like trying to recreate what he saw through his X-ray vision, and then Bart shows up saying, "Your drawing sucks."
Yeah,
and thanks him for and asks how he's like, "What are you, strong or fast? What are you, fast, strong, and psychic?" And he said he takes the MP3 player out of his pocket and said, I went to a bunch of guys in Suicide Slum saying I had 1,000 of these offenses, and someone eventually pointed me in the direction of Henderson, and Bart says, "Well, look at you channeling your inner criminal."
Yeah. And basically, this episode kind of ends in a fun way where Bart's like, "Oh, well, like, I'm gonna go explore the world. Do you want to come with me?" And Clark's like, "I wish I could, but I really have stuff that I have to deal with here." And he's like,
"Well, no." He says
Clark goes like, "Oh, why don't you stay?" And Bart's like, "If you beat me in a race, I will."
Well, the actual line is, the whole thing is, "What are you gonna do?" And I said, "See the world, whatever I can." And said, "Maybe look for more people like us, so we can maybe start a league or something."
Yes.
And Clark says he should stay in Smallville, and Bart says, "Thanks, Smallville isn't my home, and thanks for being my friend." But and then then we get the
race, which looks really goofy, but it has like the fun thing to kind of show how much faster Bart is. So they're running, Clark is starting to catch up, and Bart just turns around and is running backwards faster than him, and just like waves and smiles.
He does the thing where he takes his index finger, ML finger, and does like he
does like a surfer thing, like a
and then just super speeds away.
It turns around and goes like, he goes as fast as what normal people would see to Clark. So he's going like he's so fast that Clark can barely see him.
Yeah, he stops and he has a look of disbelief on his face, and then that music Feels Like Today by Rascal Flatts is playing, like it's swelling, and it just ends up with him like putting his hands on his hips, like smiling, and then he turns around to head home. That's when we get the ending.
Mm-hmm.
God, I love this episode.
Yeah, it is like a very fun and sweet episode.
And the thing is, like I mentioned last week, that I bring up my connection, my emotional connection to this episode.
Mm-hmm.
This was in, I want to say, June or July of 2011, and I think it was probably after my second stay in the hospital following when I fractured my, I think, L3 or L4, and had to go to the hospital like in the middle of the night, like by ambulance. And I got home, I came back, eventually was home, and I was like, I needed something to, this is back before Sandy ruined everything, and I was still living on the first floor, and I pretty much had I would lean it against my lamp and just fall asleep to Smallville episodes that I got. I'm not going to say how I got them, but I got them. And I was basically watching two things. I was basically watching two things. Either watch You Can't Do That on Television, like old episodes on YouTube, or this. And yeah, I burned through season 4. I burned through season 3 and 4 within like a week. So this episode I was about 17 at the time, and it's been close to a decade since. And the episodes, I watched it to just re-experience that high again, but it's one of those things where I don't have to rewatch it. I know it by heart.
Yep, it's a really, really good episode.
And it was written, and I'll mention this again, or I'm going to mention this again. Written by Stephen DeKnight of Daredevil fame, and of what's that movie? The Kaiju movie with that Guillermo del Toro did.
Oh, Pacific Rim?
Yeah, he directed Uprising.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely of the Justice League members they introduce, this is like the most heartfelt one.
Yeah.
Like, I would actually say, like, the one that gets, besides Black Canary, the one that gets, like, the lamest introduction is kind of Green Arrow. But...
yeah. No, the lamest is Black Canary.
Yeah, I would say besides her, like, the 3 big ones, or, like, the 4 big ones, like, he has the worst intro of, like, between, like, him, Bart, Aquaman, and Cyborg. But, he's going to show back up. I think he appears next in Justice in season 6, then yes. Doomsday in season 8, and that's it. Yep.
Or he reappears in the comics and I'm not gonna spoil it because Lou hasn't read them.
I'm trying to think. There's at least one episode where he's like on a TV stream, but his next when he returns is a really good episode.
Yeah, it's during the season where he's trying to find the Phantoms.
Mm-hmm. I think it's season 5 or 6.
6.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that you would give this episode an A+.
I give this an S grade.
Oh, okay, you can't even.
Or an S rank.
Yeah. So I would say I would give this like a A-. Like it is a good episode. There's lots of awesome stuff in here. There's like the effects are a little goofy, but they're like it's what they can do. And most you like I wish that they would have dragged this episode out longer, like had him there for 2 episodes. I guess my only downside is like I only take away points because it has like the goofy Martha scene and then
the bad subplot.
The bad subplot. The next episode, on the other hand, is like one of my favorites. So,
can I just give some background on like what Kyle Gallner's been like what he did before, notably, and then afterwards?
Yep. So
prior to this, which was again 2004, he had mainly done. This is actually his. He actually didn't do much before his first appearance on Smallville. The following year, he would have a big role on Veronica Mars, and he would go on to do stuff like Big Love, CSI in New York, and he actually in 2014 he was on Dick, or played again Dick, the Veronica Mars attempt at a spinoff with Ryan Hansen. You'd probably remember him from Party Down.
Okay.
He was the one who was trying to be who was like the blonde who was trying to be an actor.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and he was also in Outsiders. So yeah, like he's still going. Like he's selecting today. He actually looks. He even though he was like 18, around like 17, 18 when the episode aired, and he's still like the picture. His IMDb picture, ironically, makes him look like someone like a tough son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm. So like putting on some weight and growing a mustache and beard.
Yeah. So let's move on to the Freaky Friday episode.
Yeah. So episode 6 of season 4 is Transference. Nothing really to go over here beforehand. So to jump right into it, we start with Clark is in the barn, kind of throwing a football around.
No, he's in the.
He's in like the just
field.
Outside of the barn. Yeah, he's in the field. Johnathan and Jason show up and say, hey, there's a Met U scout that's going to be at the game on Friday. And Clark's like, oh, awesome. And then
we hear the ringing from that he heard in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it's been the ringing that's been like every season almost.
Yeah,
from
the disc to
the Karachi Caves to the ship.
Yeah.
So Johnathan kind of says like, oh, Jason, don't worry, and like kind of shoots him away. And Clark's like, yeah, I can hear the ringing sound. I have to go, and he runs away. So at the jail that Lionel's at, the Kansas State Penitentiary, he's having a visitation with Lex, and he's looking like very weak and sickly. And Lex is like, oh, I talked to doctors. It seems like you only got like a month to live. And Lionel's like, oh, I just didn't want to die without telling you that I loved you. And he reaches across the table to like shake his hand or something. And Clark x-rays his hand, sees that Lionel's clutching a stone. I think he believes that that he was going to stab him or something.
Yeah.
And so he like tackles him and grabs the thing in Lionel's fist. And then we get the kind of similar to the effects from like the Black Kryptonite, where the kind of essences of them kind of come out and like spin around and go back down, but switched.
Yeah.
And the guards rush in and they're like, what the hell is going on? Because Clark basically just broke into a prison.
Yeah.
But like, that's kind of not addressed because like I'm trying to think, they kind of just like ignore the thing and they kind of get up and then Clark's like, oh, what the hell, Lex, he had something in his hand. And then he like looks, he's like, wait, what? And so Clark and Lionel's body is taken away. So I'm trying to think of how to call them. So Lionel and Lark. So Lionel will be Clark and Lionel's body, and Lark is Lionel and Clark's body. So Lionel's taken away. Lark is like, oh, Yeah, I saw he was going to do something, so
He basically said he was going to stab Lex.
he's going to stab you. Dean, give me a ride home. Lex is like, okay, and brings him down, and Lark is kind of walking around the barnyard, and he sees Johnathan. It was like, can you help me with the tractor?
Well, like, no, first, or before that, we get Lex saying, like, how it's not very uncharacteristic of Clark, or of Lionel.
Yeah, he says it's very uncharacteristic of Clark to ask for a ride home. So that's why, like...
No, not that. To not speak at all during the ride home. And then he brings up stuff like, how could you... He's basically grilling him over everything he did to Lionel.
Oh, that Lark is, like, grilling Lex?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Lex is like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what kind of a monster he is.
That, and I think he said something about... like how it wasn't, like it's... Or no, after he says that, Lex says that, like, remember he murdered his parents.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get the scene with Johnathan telling him to pick up the tractor.
Yeah, and Lark is like, what?
Yeah, and just the look on it that Welling gives.
Yeah, this is like the first time. So like this episode is just all about Welling and Glover just acting their asses off as the other. And I think they both do like amazing jobs. Like Welling, Lionel, like Lark is like so good Welling is so good at doing the Lark. So he like picks it up and he's like, oh. So then,
and Johnathan goes, I'm not like 5 foot or 4 feet tall. Like lift up higher or push it up higher, and he's just like it's like he's dining. It's like he's dining on heaven, because he's
a god basically. Yeah. He's like, oh shit.
Not got the level of god that Ralph Dibny is on Flash.
Yes,
that's a whole different level of godhood.
Yes. So we cut to Lionel. So he's in his prison cell, and
fake Moby comes in.
Yes, we see all these things, and there's all these articles and research about the Stones of Power. And this is where he meets Edgar Cole, fake Moby. He's been in a million things. Actor.
And the reason I'm calling him fake Moby is that's what his role was on Community.
No, yeah, he's been in a ton of stuff. So Edgar's like, yeah, I was an expert translator, and you basically framed me for a job so that I could get you in here. And the Stone is supposed to...
He says, so you must be Lex. And he says, no, I'm Clark Kent. Oh dear. This whole thing is, Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah. And basically he's just like, yeah, so FYI, you're dying of like liver cancer or liver disease.
And I'm going to die?
Yeah, Glover's like sheepishness, like as Clark, is so good in this episode. So we cut to the barn. Lark is in there. He's like checking himself out. He's
trying to get into and the voice recognition isn't working.
And it's like he's like, God damn it. So, and then this is like the weirdest scene, but like it's perfect though. So Martha comes in and he's like, oh, it's kind of weird that you're wearing like these dress shirts and slacks. And she's like, oh, you're acting a little weird. And asks him about the ringing he heard earlier. And Lark's like, oh, I feel better now. Could I have a hug? And they hug, and like Lionel like sniffing her hair.
If you're looking at the same still, I'm looking at it's pretty creepy.
And then he laser beam eyes like the barn window. Martha's like, oh.
The exact phrase on the SMALLVILLE wiki. Lionel becomes aroused and shoots a beam of heat out of the barn window. Martha gets annoyed and leaves. If you've ever watched like Dragon Ball Z Abridged, like their versions of sex in the show, it's like very similar to that. So in the house, Jason comes by and asks Clark how he's feeling. Clark tells him that he's not going to the football game and he quit the team. And slams the door closed, and Jason is like, what?
What's going on? So you cut back to the prison with Lionel talking to Edgar, and he's like, I need you to help me make a phone call. When they enter the convict area, there's like a dude that's like, oh, you're supposed to give me all this stuff. And then like, obviously he doesn't have any of his abilities.
No, he tries to punch him, fails horribly.
Yeah, and just like whiffs and just gets the crap kicked out of him. So, Lark tries to access the computer at Luthor Corp. He tries to access the Luthor Corp database from the Torch, but Lex has changed the passwords. Chloe arrives and is like, "Oh, Clark, why are you dressed all weird?"
And then this is where we get to the whole Miss Sullivan bit.
Yeah, where she's like, "Oh," where he's just like, "Oh, what would you do if Lionel were to get out of prison?" And like kind of like, "Oh, I'm just kind of how he finds her fascinating," and then leans in and kisses her, and she's
he, as they're about to kiss, he steps back and says, "I bet you wish." Or something along those lines.
Or don't you wish, yeah. And then kind of leaves, and Chloe's like, what?
She's about to cry.
She's like, what the hell just happened? It's such a horrible thing. Like,
no, I mean, it's bad. Like, I mean, it's not.
Yeah, it's just like a really good scene to show like how goddamn evil Lionel is. Because he's just being, like, it's completely unnecessary. He's just being shitty to her just because he can. So Lana and Jason are in the office. We're at the bad plot discussing Isabel Thoreau, and Kleinel walks by and
no, Lark.
Oh yeah, Lark walks by.
I'm getting confused by these timelines.
Yeah, Lark walks by and is like, sees them kissing, and it's like, oh, makes like a comment about it, and Jason's like, oh shit, and Lana's like, and he just kind of like leaves them there.
Yeah, and then Lark goes to see Kleinel.
And he's like, I will kill Lex unless you do like this voice recording thing for the bank account, which obviously Kleinel does. Back at the barn, Lark learns that all the accounts are missing, and Lana shows up. She tells him that her relationship with Jason is serious. She's sorry he found out this way. And Kleinel's like, yeah, whatever, I don't really care. And then he starts messing around with her too.
Yeah, he tries to force a kiss, and he just gets slapped.
Yeah. And Kleinel's like, Lark is like, this is fun.
Yeah.
Martha arrives at the prison to visit Kleinel, and he tells her a story that she knows about, like when he was 6 and how he got lost in the woods. And then she's like, holy shit, you really are, like, Clark.
It was him, like how he was first getting his, like, he was still, like, he wasn't in control of his powers. Mm-hmm. So he was in the woods and got lost, and then he explains to her everything with the stones.
Yep, and he's just like, watch out, because that's the Lionel in my body.
Yeah.
And so Lark goes to the mansion to basically threaten Lex to get him.
First he goes immediately to the brand to the liquor.
Yeah, to the bar cart thing that they have, which is amazing.
Yeah, and he's like, did you pillage everything from your father?
Yeah.
And he's like, and Lex is like, I never took you for insert.
Yeah, like I think it's brandy, because I feel like they always say that Lex is drinking brandy.
Yeah, and he does a thing where he like sort of like what they do with wine.
Yeah, he swirls it kind of.
He swirls it, takes a whiff of it, and then Sam mentions, and like no one would.
I feel like he says something like, "No one would weep for you if you were to die, Lex," or something like that.
No, I was just mentioning it was just like a mundane line of dialogue where he's just like, no one would turn down a good 29-year-old brandy. Yeah,
and I think this is when Lex is starting to be like, all right, what is going on? And I think, so he starts choking him out, and I'm pretty sure Lex is like, wait, like Dad? Because he definitely realizes that it's Lionel. He realizes it's Lionel.
And then Martha shows up with some kryptonite, and he gets away. And that's the best part of the episode, or the funniest part of the episode, because Johnathan just can't catch a break.
Yeah, she's like, like she goes to try to call Johnathan,
and he's just saying casually, like he's taking his time walking to the phone. He's like, why would I need some? She says, go into the closet and get some kryptonite. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then as she's about to, like, she says, Lionel's in Clark's body, and he right as he's about to do something, Lark speeds in and grabs him by the throat.
Yep.
And like says, tell me what can hurt me.
Yeah, and then like chucks him across the room.
He CT.
Yeah. He then calls, or he gets a call from the fake Moby, And it's like, yeah, the thing won't last unless one of the people is dead. So Lark has to go and, in order for, like, with this new information, has to go and kill Kleinel. So he breaks into the prison. Or no, while this is going on, the one convict is harassing Kleinel.
And then he starts a riot.
Yeah, he like fights back, kind of throws him a thing, starts a riot. Lark shows up with the opportunity and then goes to grab his hand, but he has the stone, so they switch back. And Clark drops Lionel and the stone and speeds. Does he take the stone or does he just leave the stone? He just leaves it, right?
Yeah.
So he runs away just to like get out of the area of it. Lionel like kind of is like super confused, but then looks at his hands because like the
damage from the disease is disappeared.
Yeah. So he cut back and
like he's like, what happened? That like, what do I have to fix now?
Yeah. And he's like, yeah. So you quit the football team. You pissed off Chloe and Lana. They ignore the part where it's like you kind of had the hots your mom.
No,
they don't talk about it at all.
Yeah, because they should not. And he's like, well, I guess I gotta go. Well, I guess I gotta call or talk to Coach Teague. And
yeah, so he's like, yeah. So like, just even like when I was
when I was talking about the last episode, I was talking. This is what I was talking about. Yeah. So Clark's like, oh, it was kind of like the same thing when I was Kal-El. I was kind of drawn to them. And he's like, there's an altar in the caves, and that he thinks I'm supposed to, like, he's like, yeah, I think I'm supposed to find the other parts and combine them together. And they're like, oh, but you, like, Lionel now knows your secret. Like, he knows everything. And he just laughs, or he pretty much laughs it off by saying,
yeah, he's going to be dead soon.
Yeah.
So at school, Clark is, like, trying to patch things up with Chloe and Lana, and they're still, like, pissed. Chloe's like, you need to get psychological help. And Lana's like, yeah, totally. But also kind of don't tell anybody about me and Jason. And Clark's like, wait, what? And then Clark goes to see Lex, who's immediately has like a fist, like a big ass pistol. And as Lex like, and Lex is like, how do I know that you're not still my dad in your body? And he's like, I need proof that you're Clark's body. And Lex asks Clark what they joke about concerning the day they met. And Lex gives basically like, I can't remember what the joke is, but like Clark answers it.
Oh, I think it was about like the driving, like, or either that or
he says something and it ends up being like, what do I always tell you when we're in the car together? It's like,
oh, if he asked if there's any way he could pay him after Clark fished him out of the river.
Yeah, and it's like to drive slower, and then Lex is like, yeah. Oh, okay, and puts the pistol down and like kind of gives Clark a hug, and he's like, how is he able to do all that stuff? And Clark's like, I have no idea. Like, there is obviously some weird, crazy shit happening that he was in my body, so it must have been part of that, which is like kind of a good excuse.
Yeah.
And then Clark's like, oh, can you also do me a favor? There was like this one dude in prison who like helped me out. Can you get him out? Which he does.
But she ends up.
But he gets intercepted before Lex can talk to him, and
we get a return from Lois Lane herself.
Yep. So the first thing we get is Lionel's like talking to his doctor, I believe, and he's like, "Yeah, you're good, you're healthy." And then Fake Moby gets into the car with.
Well, no. He says he asks him if anything has happened, and he's like, and Lionel's just straight up says, "No, I don't remember anything of the past few days." And
yeah, which is totally a lie.
No, I'm pretty sure it actually.
He doesn't remember?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I guess we'll see when we visit those episodes.
Because it's like the doctor his doctor says that what happened with his condition changing everything was nothing short of a miracle, and
like an act of God kind of thing. Yeah.
And Lionel says he touches his where his heart, like he touches his chest, like where his heart is, and says something must have changed. Something, I think something's changed in here, which is basically Lionel's face turn. Yeah, it is
sort of. It's to be start of it, but then it kind of takes another step at the end of the season as well.
Yeah, with the
stone again.
Yeah.
So at the end, Fake Moby is released. he gets into a car with Bridget Crosby.
Who takes the crystal from him?
Yes, the water crystal.
Yeah.
Which I believe is the black one, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Because the first one is the one that's clear, which is the air one. And the last one is the fire one, and that's the one that's like a metal color. So, no, and then that's where the episode ends.
Oh, did you notice who the inmate was?
Oh, who was like attacking him?
Yeah.
No, who was it?
Ving Rhames.
Wait, was it really?
Yes.
Oh, I did not even notice that. Maybe I was thinking of like another. I was thinking. Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, wow. Interesting. Well, yeah, so to me, this is an episode I like more than the last one, just because I like the two of them flipping roles and playing their other versions. So I give this episode like a solid A. And I don't know, I think it's really fun, and we get a whole lot of setup for the coming season. And we get like some good backstory on and the little stuff with Martha as well. But I don't know, this is one of my favorite episodes, so I don't know, was there anything else you wanted to talk about with it?
Well, I was going to there's no point spoiling this since this season aired 15 years ago.
Yes.
Or over 15 years ago. This whole thing sets up, as I mentioned, Lionel's face turn. He ends up becoming the vessel for Jor-El.
Yes, the second vessel. Because I would say Johnathan was the first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he becomes more of like a permanent vessel. Like he's a vessel for like 2 seasons, basically until he's no longer part of the show. Like this version of Lionel. So, yeah. So our next pair of episodes, kind of doing that dip back down. So first is Jinx, which we get the Smallville...
I can't pronounce
Mr. Mixoplex.
Oh, he becomes... Instead of Johnathan, where he was like a vessel for Jor-El...
is he an emissary?
No.
Jor-El's kind of like in his head.
He becomes the Oracle of Jor-El.
Ah, okay. And then our second episode is the Smallville. It's called Spell, and it's the Smallville version
of Charmed.
Yeah, of Charmed or Hocus Pocus, which is no way. So yeah, that's happening. So don't forget to catch the other podcast. You have the comic show that's every Thursday, and then you also have a Legion of Tunes, which is part of the Los Horror Network. So go to loshorror.wordpress.com. We watch everything animated there. Our next pick is Alan's pick, which we are watching Code Monkeys, which I finished all the episodes already. It's a fun show, like 8-bit comedy. I did not realize that it was like from somebody that created like a whole bunch of other.
I'm abusing.
Yep. And you have another show, which you guys are going to be doing a ton of stuff.
Yeah. When will this be out? So I can just
Tuesday.
Tuesday of next week.
Yes.
Okay, then hopefully the episodes may come out side by side or at least same day. Hopefully, Emmett Watkins, Graydon Webb, and myself will be doing our predictions for E3. And Tuesday, there's something coming. We have from Lazar Games, something from Josh, which, if I'm not mistaken, is either. I think it's a backlog to the front. And then the next day, on Wednesday, are the LSG Roundtable for the horrors of E3's past, which you'll find things like Sony's 2006 press conference, where they unveiled... No, when they talk... I didn't bring that up, because I should have, but I brought up the whole Ridge Racer thing with Kaz Hirai. I brought up the the Genji 2 demo where I basically said that summarizes the whole conference in a nutshell, because you have someone showing off a game saying we took this is all based on history, and then there's a bunch of crabs that come, like big crabs that come and attack you, and the whole thing was attack through its weak point for massive damage. Josh talked about, or he wrote about, Activision 2007 with Jimmy Kennedy, where it may be the most unwatchable thing. And Graydon talked about the most thing that goes hand in hand with like horror of E3, and that is Mr. Caffeine from Ubisoft's 2011 press conference. So aside from that, I'm on Losaro Games on the Losaro Games YouTube channel. Emmett's Life is Strange Before the Storm LP is still going. By the time on the 9th, or starting on the 9th, I will be starting a new LP of one of my favorite games of all time. I will leave that a mystery. And there's also the current PlayStation All-Stars Ultimate Roster Showdown with me and Emmett. I chose it's Batman against Spider-Man, and I'm hoping to actually win one of these polls. So don't worry, Lou. I'll get you the links for everything.
All right. So that does it for this week. So don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to everything. Leave 5 stars, hit that notification button, and tell a friend. All right, so we will catch you guys next time. I'm Lou Gonzalez.
And I'm Alan Muir, and this
podcast is the truth, justice,